I know you've probably watched every review of the X5 on YouTube by now, most of which were sponsored by the exact same company they were reviewing, and not honestly evaluating whether this camera is actually better than what we had before. Well, my name is Ben Claremont, and I've reviewed every single 360 camera Insta360 have ever released, and not once have I ever accepted sponsorship for one of my reviews, which I firmly believe is unethical. So in this video, I'll share my honest, unbiased, and unsponsored opinion of the X5 to help you decide whether you should buy it or wait for the next generation camera to come out. Now, if you are considering the X5 for making awesome reframed video content, or even shooting professional virtual tours with it for paid clients, inside my Virtual Tour Pro and 360 Video 101 courses, I teach both topics in depth for complete beginners. These two courses have helped thousands and thousands of creators shoot professional looking 360 content in days, not years. So if you're curious to learn more, just follow the links below. Now, to spoil this entire video up front, I'll say that the X5 is potentially the most flawless 360 camera I've ever reviewed, and will be a very obvious upgrade for many of you. But don't believe me just yet. First, let's evaluate the pros and the cons so you can come to that conclusion on your own. Let's start by taking a look at the design. Here is the X5. It looks pretty good overall. I've noticed they've gone with this geometric pattern on one side, which looks pretty cool. On the other side is the big touchscreen. On one side, you'll find the on button and quick settings, as well as a USB-C charging port here behind a watertight door. Then on the other side, you'll find the battery compartment, which when you open it, also houses the SD card, which comes out pretty easily like so. Here's the card I'm using with the X5. It's from the official Insta360 store. I'll link it below if you want to check it out. And the battery of the X5 is slightly bigger than the battery of the X4, although not that much. Otherwise, as usual, it has microphones all the way around, so it's going to be capturing audio no matter which direction you have the camera pointed. And on this side here, you'll see it's got a sound windshield to help improve sound quality. Here it is next to the X4. It's pretty similar overall, very similar weight and shape, as well as the buttons being in a very similar position, with the only change being they moved the charging door to this side, whereas before with the X4 it was on the battery side. So this has obviously created more space to house a slightly bigger battery. The screens of both cameras also look roughly the same size. And for those who own an X3, here it is next to the X5. As you can see, the X5 is definitely bigger and a little bit heavier, as well as having a slightly thicker body. However, it still doesn't feel like a heavy camera, and I can't see the weight being an issue in too many situations. This brings me to potentially the biggest physical upgrade of this camera that the previous generation didn't have, and that is replaceable lenses. This is something that users have been requesting for a very, very long time, and finally with the X5 it's arrived. So as you can see, you can get a lens replacement kit with the X5, so if your lens ever breaks, you can simply just replace it in a couple of minutes. Here's the tool that comes in the lens replacement kit, and it really is just as simple as attaching it to the lens, which it slots very easily in place, then screwing to one side, and then voila, the lens has just come out. So you can now put the replacement lens in place and install it the exact same way. That took me literally 20 seconds to change the lens. So this is a bit of a groundbreaking feature, especially given that these lenses are being sold on the Insta360 website for around $30, which is extremely cheap for a lens. However, with that said, if you are considering buying the X5, if you follow my link in the description down below, you'll get a free lens replacement kit. So if the worst ever happens to your camera, you'll have a spare lens to replace it just as quickly as you saw me do it. I found the battery life of the X5 to be very good and will last the most part of a day if you turn it off in between shooting. While Insta360 say it has a fast charge time of 20 minutes to charge 80% of the battery, when I did this same test myself, after 20 minutes it only charged 40% of the battery. So that's a far way away from 80%, but still I'd say that 40% charge in 20 minutes is pretty damn good. The X5 also comes with a whole bunch of new accessories that you can find on their website, but unfortunately these will not work with previous generations of Insta360 camera, purely because the design changes from camera to camera and therefore things aren't in the same place as they were before. So if you own any accessories from the previous generation, unfortunately they are not going to work with the X5. At least anything that attaches directly to the body and hugs the shape of the camera. Although of course all the standard accessories are still going to work, like selfie sticks, tripods, carry cases and so on. Now let's take a look at the specs of the X5. And if you look at the numbers here, you'll see we've got 8K 30 and 5.7K 30 and 60. This is exactly what we had before with the Insta360 X4, those exact same frame rates, and very little has changed in terms of resolutions and frame rates. However, the main internal change here is that the sensor has been upgraded with the X5 to what is now dual 1/1.28 inch sensors, which is a pretty substantial upgrade from the half-inch sensors of the X4. They describe it as 144% bigger. You might also describe it as just 44% bigger. It's like going from this to this, not this to this. But still, regardless, an upgraded sensor is always a good thing and will help your shots have less noise, better sharpness, and better overall capabilities in both daytime and night in both your photos and videos. Now, this is all well and good with the spec numbers, and I know some people like comparing this to death to really see which one is the better one on paper, but personally, I could care less about numbers. What really matters is how good the photos and videos are from the camera, which is what I'm going to compare right now. So in my previous video, I put the X5 against the 3 previous generation Insta360 cameras, and it was noticeably better than the other 3. As you can see, this shot has much better dynamic range, better contrast, a little bit less flaring, and the colors look really nice and vibrant straight out of the camera. I also noticed that it was a little bit sharper than the others, not a lot, but a little bit, including the 1RS 1-inch, which has a bigger sensor. However, it also has lower resolution. And as you can see with this really punched in shot, you've got a lot less noise with the X5 than you do the X4, X3. As you can see, there's heaps of it here, and even the 1RS 1-inch. So you could definitely say that this isn't just an incremental upgrade, that the X5 actually looks noticeably better than the previous generation and the generations before that. If you want to check out that video in full, I'll link it down below. But now let's take a look at how the X5 performs on its own with the various shooting settings. So the main 3 modes you'd consider using for 360 video are 5.7K with HDR, 5.7K plus, and 8K, all of which look pretty good. You can see the dynamic range looks good with all of them, the contrast is good, and the light on my face is pretty impressive given how strong the light source is behind me with all 3 shots. Here's a still shot of the Harbour Bridge, and there's really not that much difference between the 3. You'd think that 5.7K and 8K are going to look substantially different. And while you could argue that the water here looks a little bit sharper, which it definitely does, you probably need to squint to see it. And the 5.7K plus looks somewhere in between, which seems a little bit confusing because why have all these different resolutions if they're going to look roughly the same? If you do zoom in, you will see better clarity here on the bottom of the bridge of the 8K shot than you will the 5.7K shot. But I'm going to be doing some more investigation into this because I feel like the shooting modes are just too similar and produce an equally good result no matter which settings you use. Here's a flaw I want to point out. For some reason, I don't know if it's just this shot or not, but you're getting this weird stroby thingy effect. I don't even know what to describe it. It's like I don't know, it's like static or murraying. I'm not sure, but the Harbour Bridge has really brought it out here. And again, I am at extreme zoom levels here, so it's going to be much more noticeable than here in the wide shot where you're probably not going to notice it at all, aside from maybe the 5.7K shot a little bit. Now in 5.7K mode, you can use active HDR, which is essentially HDR video. So for shots like this one, where you've got a lot of shadows and highlights in the same image, especially with the direct sun, you can turn that on and it will reduce that sun area where it can totally blow out the sky sometimes and give you some detail there that you probably wouldn't have been able to capture otherwise. With that said, here's HDR off and on, and there's not a huge difference. I've noticed it with some situations, but not others. So I'll also have to investigate and report back as to when the best time to use active HDR would be. Regardless, I'd absolutely say that the dynamic range is good with the X5 and will definitely be good enough for the majority of situations you'll be shooting. Although I think I've found something I like even better than HDR with the X5, and that is to do with frame rates. So you may or may not notice, but when I shoot my YouTube videos, I shoot at 60 frames a second because it creates a more realistic movement effect. Like it feels more real, like I'm actually there sitting with you. And with the X5, it also has 60 frames per second mode in 5.7K. And when recording in this mode with active HDR on, these shots are truly incredible. I don't know, there's just something about them that gives them that sense of realism, like you're actually there standing with me walking around Sydney Harbour. And this is not going to be for everyone. A lot of people like cinematic frame rates like 25 and 30. So if this is you, then you won't care less about this. However, generally I find when I use 60 FPS, my shots just feel a bit sharper and crisper. So this is absolutely a good thing, and I feel like it's gotten even better with the X5. The X5 also shoots slow motion at 120 frames per second in 4K mode, and this is very decent. While it's not the sharpest quality, the movement of the slow motion is very impressive, and this absolutely will pass for the odd slow motion shot you shoot. This is a sound test using the inbuilt mic of the X5. It has improved since the last camera, but how much is the question. I found it to be pretty good in gentle wind and outdoors, but how does this sound? Is this usable? If so, I think a lot of you will be very happy. I don't know about you, but that sounded pretty good to me. And when I put the X5 head to head against the previous generation Insta360 cameras, it recorded the best sound by far. Again, you can listen to that comparison in my previous video. Now, one of the most impressive shooting situations that the X5 really excels in is low light. Insta360 have added a new mode called Pure Video, where you can switch it over from regular video mode to pure video, and it will automatically choose the best shooting settings for low light. Combined with AI, and I don't fully understand what is behind it, but let's take a look at how it turns out. So here we have non-pure video versus pure video, and the shot on the right just looks so much brighter and like it's got proper exposure. So if you were to do color correction on this shot, you probably wouldn't need to touch any of the exposure sliders, whereas you would with the one on the left. Here it is again, and yeah, that exposure is so much better on the right hand side. I will say though, if you zoom in quite a bit, any level of zoom is going to make these pure video shots look mushy and not great. So don't expect a miracle when it comes to video quality with pure video. However, for normal wide angle shots, which is probably what you'll be shooting, the nighttime pure video mode is extremely impressive and leaves very little blur and obvious grain, which you get with 99% of other cameras. I can't believe with this shot, I literally just put the camera into pure video mode. I didn't touch a single setting, yet the end result looks really good. Even in this challenging low light, it has captured it really well. I even pushed it to the extreme by using it on this swing, and surprisingly, there was very little to no motion blur, just an awesome shot with good exposure and very little grain. Although if you look across the edges, this really doesn't look ideal, so it still has some improvement to be made around light sources at nighttime in pure video mode. Here I am standing in the bushes like an absolute creep, but I've got pure video mode on, so hopefully you can see me creeping out here in the darkness and see what pure video looks like. The stitching with the X5 is pretty good as usual. Here I put the seam line right up to my face, and yes, you do notice it at very close distances. However, it's interesting seeing the difference between optical flow stitching and their new AI stitching, which seems to stitch in a different way that isn't perfect, but might be a better choice in some situations. Again, I'll experiment with this further. But I'd say as long as you keep your action away from the sides of the camera in general, it's fine. If the odd shot goes towards your face or whatever, as long as you're not permanently shooting your video like this, I think you'll be good. Another point I want to make with the X5 is that all of the shots you've seen so far have not been color graded even slightly, yet the colors and contrast and exposure are all really good. And as someone who is probably shooting a lot of content, you don't want to have to stop and edit and color grade every single shot you make. And I'd say that this is probably the first 360 camera in history, at least the ones that I've used, where I haven't felt the need to color grade my shots. So with this comes a massive shortcut in your overall workflow in being able to completely cut out color correction. Of course, you can still do it, but it's not absolutely necessary. If you're wondering whether the X5 overheats, especially when shooting 8K video, I put this to the test. I put it outside here in Sydney in the direct sun and let it record until it got to the point that it either stopped or overheated. And eventually, yes, it did overheat, but that was only after 1 hour, 17 minutes and 58 seconds had passed, which is extremely impressive for continuous 8K shooting. Now, this also isn't to say that you will get these same results, because every shooting situation is different. Sometimes the camera will get hotter and overheat more in warmer climates or doing certain types of activities, but this is what I got, so take it with a grain of salt. Now, I also made an entire video dedicated to the X5's 360 photography ability. If you are shooting virtual tours and you want to see how it compares to its top 3 competitors, I put it side by side with the One RS 1-inch, Theta Z1 and X4, and it outperformed all of them, including the Theta Z1 with a 1-inch sensor. It had better dynamic range, better sharpness, and potentially the number one thing that is going to be important to 360 photographers is workflow. With the Theta Z1, I know many of you own it. You'll know that the workflow takes a long time to shoot merged, bracketed HDR shots with external plugins, having to edit them, put them together, color correct them. It's a really long process. But with the X5 and the inbuilt HDR mode, again, it's kind of like one click and you're done. You barely need to color correct at all. It will automatically merge all the HDR bracketed shots instantly in Insta360 Studio, taking that overall workflow time of like 10 to 15 minutes per photo down to 1 minute or less, which is why I think this is going to be a really good option for shooting virtual tours in 2025 and beyond. Again, I'll link my photo comparison video down below. Now, the X5 also shoots in single lens mode up to 4K 60 frames per second, and not gonna lie, these shots look awesome. They've got great clarity, dynamic range, and colors. Again, you wouldn't need to touch these in terms of color correction. While I don't love the fact that the horizon kind of wobbles a little bit, I guess this is what you would also get if you're shooting with a GoPro or another type of fixed lens camera. So it's just another option, another way to use the X5 for different types of content. From what I understand as well, they will be adding pure video mode to single lens shooting in a future firmware update. It's also got this new mode called Instaframe, where you can basically set it up in advance to reframe in one direction only, saving the need for reframing later on using software. Here's an example of it where I chose the view as selfie view, so pointing back towards the selfie stick. I moved it around quite a bit to give it a challenge. I think it's done a pretty good job overall. However, it did struggle to keep up with me at times, so I think that's definitely an area for improvement. However, along with this reframed shot that it automatically recorded, it also records the 360 version. So you could just manually reframe this yourself from scratch if you wanted and change the aspect ratio and do whatever you want. So it's essentially recording 2 separate files, with one of them being a pre-reframed shot that you can just instantly import and export, unlike other shots where you have to manually reframe yourself. So if you're someone that wants to do the absolute bare minimum of editing, then this Instaframe option could be what you're looking for. Now, the X5 has heaps and heaps of other features that I won't be covering in this video. Just head to their website if you want to see absolutely everything. But I would say that this camera really is very, very capable in so many ways at so many things. And I've also noticed that they've tried simplifying the editing experience a bit as well over the past year or so. There's a lot of like one click to reframe features in both the desktop software and mobile app that make reframing a really really simple and fast process. And that's one way I see Insta360 outperforming the competition. Not that there is much competition in the 360 camera space, but often you see these small up and coming cameras enter the market, but their workflows are absolutely horrendous and it takes a really long time to do anything. The apps are just absolutely bare bones and borderline unusable. Whereas Insta360 seem to have been refining both their desktop and mobile software a lot over the years. Now let's talk about the price. It's $550, making it the most expensive X camera to date. Is it worth it? Well, that's up to you. But from my perspective, this camera is just so good, and I'm almost embarrassed that I can't think of more cons to mention in this video, but they're just getting to the point now where they are hearing people's feedback from previous cameras when they complain about cons and fixing them. The main one from the previous generations was the lenses kept getting broken and scratched, and it was really hard to replace them. And they've gone ahead and fixed that major problem with this update, as well as some other things that people have complained about, which they've gone on and fixed. I see them justifying the $550 price point, which is a bit higher than the X4, in the increased sensor size, which often costs more money to put inside a camera, as well as the replaceable lenses feature. That's obviously a really important one. Like if you think of if you were to break a lens on another kind of camera and you had to completely replace it, let's say there was either a warranty or not, and you have to spend the time to replace that camera and money that it usually costs to do this, it's probably going to end up quite a bit more than this small increase from the X4 to X5. So if you've never owned a 360 camera before, then yes, I'd say the X5 really is a no-brainer purchase. But what if you own a previous generation Insta360 camera like the X3, X4, or One RS 1-inch? Well, I'll start by saying if you own the X4, no, don't upgrade, because the X5 is just a little bit too similar to it in that you can shoot awesome content with the X4. You don't need this to create similar types of content. While it is an improvement with low light and general dynamic range and sharpness, it's not that much, and I'd probably advise waiting until the X6 comes out, probably next year. If you own any other Insta360 camera, including the X3 or One RS 1-inch, then yes, the X5 is absolutely an upgrade. Not only does it shoot better photos and videos, but it's also got better physical features like the replaceable lens. And I've also noticed the user experience is so good and so fast. See, that camera just turned on in 1 second. Whereas with previous generation Insta360 cameras, let's give it a go. Pressing. That was 5 seconds. 5 seconds adds up when you're doing it 50 times a day. And I just feel like every part of the user experience of the X5 is designed to be fast and easy and beginner friendly. And that's something that I think the previous generations of Insta360 cameras weren't quite as good at. So if you're either a beginner or you want a really fast workflow, then the X5 is going to meet your needs due to the automatic settings being so good in this camera that you barely have to touch them. In fact, I still have not gone to manual exposure yet since using the X5. And I also haven't color corrected a single shot. So that's a lot of time saved with a much faster workflow due to better shots straight out of the camera. Now, if you are sold on the X5, be sure to follow the link down below to get a free lens replacement kit that will come to you with your camera. Otherwise, you'll have to pay $30 for these separately. Now, I just want to wrap up this video by talking briefly about trustworthiness, because there has been so many sponsored reviews around the X5 that it's been really concerning, to be honest, since the majority of voices out there are being paid for their opinion. So I just warn you to be really careful with any review videos you watch and make sure everything makes sense to you. If someone's sponsored, it's likely that they are only going to talk about the pros and not the cons. Which brings up the question, can you actually trust Insta360? Well, obviously they are complying with this whole sponsorship of reviews, meaning that they're probably trying to influence their perception to the public. So I'm going to say that that doesn't quite sit well with me, and I'd encourage them to reconsider doing this with their next launch. Also, I have noticed some very suspicious suspicious comments on my video and other videos that just seem like they were made by the company but being disguised as the average user. Like these comments here from my previous video where I did not say a single thing about replaceable lenses, yet there are two comments posted 1 minute apart both talking about, whoa, replaceable lenses is so game-changing, amazing. And they then had 10 and 11 likes within 50 minutes or so, which would then push those comments to near the top of the comment section. Yet these comments feel like something the company would say and not an actual user. Again, especially on a video that never mentioned replaceable lenses. Now, I did actually ask Insta360 to explain and whether this was them, to which they said no, this was not. Okay, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but also just check out the comment section on this video that they posted today, where the top couple of comments are saying things like this.
Just took my X5 hiking and the Auto 360 capture is a total hero. Never miss a moment. Plus, Instaframe's 5.7K footage looks insanely crisp even with zero editing. Best hiking buddy ever.
Who says that? And again, there's 3 of them here with 11, 11, and 10 likes. This account is from someone who has a display shelf as their profile picture. A little bit strange, don't you think? In fact, on the Insta360 sales website, here you've got this little box that appears to be like a live stream. And when you click it, it looks like a live stream and it's got comments on the left-hand side. And let's take a look at some of these comments. Here is what Stargazer88 says.
This upgrade has been a huge lifesaver for me. Just broke my lens playing skateboarding last year.
Playing skateboarding last year. Now, I'm not trying to say anything, but these definitely look like planted comments, meaning that no, I don't think you really can trust Insta360 at this point in time. While they have been better with their ethical practices lately, there's still a few things like this that just don't seem right. I know I've gone off on a massive tangent here, but I'll just also add that this doesn't really have any effect over the X5. It's still the best all-in-one 360 camera on the market in terms of quality and workflow and so on. But again, I'll just warn you to pick and choose your information sources about cameras like this, since a lot of it is being influenced by the company selling it, but not Mr. Ben, which is why you should hit the subscribe button down below. To me, my reputation means everything to me, so I'm not going to shill out and sell my soul for sponsorship. Even though, yes, I do accept sponsorship and sponsorship from Insta360, it's never ever for a review video. Whew, that was a serious video. Okay, anyway, so if you're curious about the X5 and you want to see my in-depth comparison of it with its closest competitors for both 360 video and 360 photography, check out these 2 videos here, because in them I go into a lot of depth about how the X5 compares to its closest competitors right now.